Okay, I think if we could start now. First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody, both here in person at the Kent Cricket Ground, which is a lovely venue watching the green space out there. Green is very calming colour, and so it's a nice place to be. And also for those who are joining online and are watching online. And hopefully the reception there is strong. Let me introduce myself. My name's Andrew George. I've had the privilege of being chair of Oxleas since May, and I must admit I've really enjoyed my time here so far at Oxleas. It's a fantastic organisation to be part of. Fantastic because of its commitment to what it is doing, to support the people it cares for, and fantastic as well because of its commitment to its staff, and also what we've seen today upstairs, the desire to innovate, to make things better for the people that we serve. And so in my time here, I've been really impressed with several things about Oxleas. I've been really impressed with the complexity of the services we run. 125 different sites around the south of England and in Bromley, Bexley and Greenwich. But really also humbled by the dedication that I've seen of the staff here, the hard work they put in and the care that they give the people that we serve. And today is an opportunity really to do two things. One is to look back and to look back on the past year, on what has happened, what's been achieved, and also an opportunity to look forward into the future. And this is an opportune moment with the launch of the new strategy that Iffy will be talking more about in a moment, and there are copies of the strategy, hard copies of the strategy as well on the table. And so I'm going to stop there, but you will see more of me later, and I'm going to ask Iffy as Chief Executive to give an overview of the year. Sorry, I probably should have clicked forward from that first slide. So just to, but before I ask him up, I'll just quickly summarise what's going to be happening in the course of this. Iffy's going to be giving our one-year report. Then Azra will be overseeing the financial report. Then I will be summarising some of the changes that have been happening to the Board of Directors and to the Governor's elections and changes in the governing body. Then Sue, as lead governor, will be giving a membership report, and then James will be giving a keynote speech looking forward to some of the ways in which we're going to be developed. And then at the end there will be an opportunity for questions to the panel about the work of Oxleas. So I'll stop there and hand over to Iffy.
Thank you, Andrew, and good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yep. Great. Just about. Do you mind? It's going to be noisy. Do you mind if I just... How is that? Thank you. Right, good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you. Really delighted to see so many here today. As Andrew has said, I'm going to spend a few minutes, probably of the order of 10 minutes, if you include a few films that are embedded in my talk, just discussing or sharing with you what we spent our time doing in the last year, and also what our plans are for the year ahead. As I've done previously, much of our work over the last year has been about our strategy, which has now come to an end. You will recall that we set out our strategy in 2021 until 2024 with three big priorities, which were achieving zero delays, delivering great out-of-hospital care, and making Oxleas a great place to work. And our zero delays work since the strategy was launched was largely about clarifying waiting times across our services. As I've said previously, and I want to repeat it again, it was never about saying no one waits, but it was more about clarifying waiting times, making those times visible so that our staff would know how long people referred would wait to be able to discuss with users of services, but also making sure that those we look after are adequately informed. Now, what that has done is that it has enabled us to implement over 20 quality improvement projects to reduce weight. Just through that exercise, being a lot clearer about who is waiting, how long they're waiting, what they're waiting for. So we've had to redesign pathways in some instances to enable us to see people promptly. All of our strategy put together, I've just summarized on this slide some of the benefits we've realized. We've partnered with voluntary sector organizations such as Mind to create mental health well-being hubs across the boroughs that we serve. The implication of that is that people have ready access to support. And for some of these hubs, it's not just about mental health, it's also about housing, benefit advice, etc. And so that's been really very helpful. We've also increased the services we provide in our community health services across Greenwich and Bexley to support people. Some of those have been about new funding we've attracted. Some have been about how we've redesigned our services. And of course, the services that really come to mind is how quickly we respond to emergency needs people have in the community without them having to go to hospital. So for example, only in the last few months, we have ambulance cars with our staff in those cars responding to people's needs in their homes. And of course, we also are measured in terms of our community response. But two, we have virtual wards, which means that people are looked after in their homes with technology and with support. I'm particularly pleased that we've managed in the last year to establish our Oxleas Involve, which is a group that consists of users of services and carers who have supported the exec and the board in reviewing the work that we do. They did fantastic work reviewing our risk register, making sure that our risk register makes sense to users of services. And we've done all of these things within the financial envelope that we've been given by NHS England and others who commission our services. The work we've done with staff, improving their well-being, has resulted in us being named one of the best places to work in 2023. And of course, we've seen our NHS staff survey improve significantly to the point that we're the top in London of similar organizations and in the top 3 across England. And all of that, I would argue, culminated in Oxleas being named the Trust of the Year by the Health Service Journal, something that we really have been very proud of. And I would hate, come December, to do away with this. This is all my background in teams, and I'm sure by next month, another team or trust will receive the similar award for 2024. So we've had a real strong focus on quality. In previous meetings, you would have seen on the tables copies of our annual quality report, but you can see this is on our website, so it is available as a flip book, as we sometimes joke, a flipping book. So you see more of what we've done and what we've achieved in 23-24, if you want to access that. Looking forward, we started last summer to think about our strategy for the next period, and quite a lot of engagement, and I am grateful indeed to many of my colleagues, some who are in this room, for the work and the effort they put in, engaging staff, engaging our stakeholders to think about what our strategy will include in the coming 3 years. So many told us that our strategy 21 to 24 was right, had the key components in it, and so that we were on the right track, and all we needed to do was to improve on that. There was a sense that people wanted us to be clearer about what we mean, what we say we'll do, And so we have adopted that in terms of how we describe our plans for the next strategy. A real desire to be more committed to research and innovation, that too we've taken on board. And this real sense that we need to be more compassionate, not just to each other, but also to the people we serve, particularly at a time when we know that people we see come along with more complex conditions, they come along with multiple conditions. And my experience, I don't know if you'll agree, is that people seem to demand more, and seem to be a little bit impatient. And so that's something that we're thinking about how we support our staff in doing. And then finally, and this is something that's really important to me, is ensuring that everyone who works at Oxleas has a good experience. Because if our staff don't have a good experience, firstly, they will go. And secondly, we could spend all of our time trying to find staff. And lastly, we won't be able to provide good enough services to the people that we serve. So if this works, there should be a video. Steve, no pressure. That just shows you an animation of our strategy, and then I'll continue. Steve, is it your turn to? No? Just click.
Over the past 3 years, we've taken our strategy forward by improving services, increasing service user and carer involvement, and making Oxleas a better place to work. Learning from this and feedback from patients, staff and partners, we've developed our plans for the future. We are prioritising great care. We want to deliver kind, compassionate, high-quality care. Timely care. We want to deliver the right care at the right time. Best place to work. We want Oxleas to be the best place to work in the NHS. We are committed to equity for all, strong patient and carer involvement, being a force for good in local communities, cultivating continuous improvement, creating a thriving, safe, listening and learning culture, partnerships, innovation, embedding sustainability, and living within our means. We look forward to working with you to put this into action. For more information, visit oxleas.nhs.uk.
Seamlessly, that worked really well. So I also want to talk about something that really matters to me, which is equity of care. It matters because unless we actively seek to ensure that our care is equitable, people that we serve will not fulfill their full potential. And I know that there are colleagues in the room, Genevieve, I see you there, and others who are helping us to make this happen. This slide is just to make the point about the distinction between equality and equity. Equality is about give everyone the same chance. Equity is about understanding people's needs and making sure that where necessary, we give additional support so that everyone can achieve the same. As you can see, by adding 2 stools, they all achieve the same height or the same outcomes, so to speak. And this is clearly a key commitment to us in Oxleas. It's also a key commitment to the whole of the NHS, and this is something that we're really, really dedicated to coming forward. So again, I've got a few slides. I've got a signal, a few something in terms of a montage that consists of some of the work we've done thinking about this for our staff, but also for our patients, which I hope will paint a picture of how we feel and what we've been doing about this.
So now, building a fairer Oxleas, I think that's focused on our staff, but it's one part of a wider jigsaw of equity matters. That runs through everything we do in Oxleas. So BAFO, Building a Fairer Oxleas, is one part of it. The work we're doing around service user inequalities and health inequalities and PCREF is another, but it all comes together under that banner of equity.
The Patient and Carer Race Equality Framework is the newest attempt to address some long-standing inequalities that have existed in mental health services for a long time. So it's an opportunity for us to actually address some stuff in a really interesting way and hopefully an effective way, but data is going to be some of the stuff that we really look at. So we need people to really think about the equality data that we have in the organisation and how we can make that better.
Increasing the awareness around ADHD is definitely what we're planning to do through community outreach. So for example, today was our session at Charlton FC for coaches to increase their awareness about ADHD amongst children and adults, players.
It's been a great event today. It's been lovely to hear some really powerful stories from some individuals.
And so when we talk about equity for all, it's really about the degree to which we as an organization will be focused on making sure that we think about people we serve and what their needs are and adjust our services to accommodate them or to meet their needs. And that's me done. Azra.
I'm going to attempt this now with the stand. Can everybody hear me all right? Yeah, perfect. Okay, so the part of the annual members meeting you were all looking forward to, it's me talking about finances for 10 minutes. So this is basically a summary of the position that we ended last year on, and then you've got the year before as a comparison. Really, the areas to focus on are the ones that are coloured in blue and then yellow right at the bottom. So the first one is what our actual surplus was that we generated for the year. That was £2.2 million. We then had a technical adjustment, which is what that impairment is, to take us to the figure that we were monitored by NHS England on. So this was the target. We had a target, we overperformed it by more than 2.5 million because we were able to sell off some of our assets, which were no longer required. And that brought us to a 4.1 million and meant that we met that NHSE England target. There were then some further technical adjustments so that the bottom line of that figure on old money, profit and loss, was a £2.9 million deficit. But as I said, we've met the target that we were required to from our day-to-day operations. So let me just give you a bit of a breakdown then of whereabouts our income moved from the start of the financial year in 2023-24 to the end. So just a couple of areas that I'm going to mark out here. The first bubble, 20.8 million, for those of you that can't spot the figures at the back of the room, that was the full year effect of all of our Southwest prisons coming online. So there was 10 prisons in Southwest. We started those services in 2022, and then we had some additional income to cover the full 12 months in that year. We had inflation funding of 4 million, and those of you that remember what inflation looked like last year, that was really quite significant. And then we had a range of areas of investment that we were given through a range of different sources. So between mental health, community physical and the virtual wards that Iffy was talking about earlier on, we had £12.4 million worth of additional funding from commissioners for new services. I think that was probably the key elements I was going to draw out from there. You then see a little element at the bottom in blue, and that was where we got that funding from. So 48% of our income that we ran our services from were from South East London ICB. There was a further 40% that was directly from NHS England. And just the type of services that we get funded directly would be all of our prison services, plus our forensic services. Those are probably the two big elements that we get our income from. And we effectively get the income for all of the South London forensic services that run through Oxleas because we're the lead provider for that service. I will just mention briefly at the top, because this did help us significantly last year, the £4.2 million worth of interest that we were able to earn on our cash in the bank. And interest rates were high during that period. So that's effectively what we were able to generate on our cash throughout the year. And we ended the year with about £128 million in the bank. Moving on to expenditure. Again, very similar story. Top line is just going to talk you through what the key expenditure differences were from the beginning of the year to the end, and the bottom line will then say what we actually spent that money on. So, key highlights. For those of you that are eagle-eyed, you will note the first little kind of lollipop bubble shows that on our southwest prisons we spent £22.9 million. So that was £2.1 million more than the income that we had for that year. I am pleased to say that this financial year we have worked very, very hard, and when I say we, I'm definitely using the collective we, because the prisons and the offender healthcare and forensics department really put a lot of time and effort in here. We've managed to get those two to balance each other out. We had inflation cost us about 4.2, so about £200,000 more than the funding that we'd effectively received, and then we spent a significant amount on pay awards, on agency costs, basically filling vacancies that we had not managed to fill through permanently employing people, and that is usually because we haven't been able to manage to recruit people, and that does come at a premium. And effectively just a series of other costs, but I think I've highlighted the key ones that were the major differences between those two. Then in terms of where we spent that money, 60% of all of our expenditure goes on staff. And that is because we are a very people-orientated set of services. 23% was then on healthcare contracts, and that is principally going to be in our forensic services, but also actually in our offender healthcare services. And that's where we've employed other organisations to come and help us to deliver the full range of services that we need to provide. And you're going to see some much, much smaller bubbles, which you probably can't read, but they highlight things like premises costs and training, of which we spent about 1% of the total expenditure of the trust. The next slide then takes us through to what in old money was called the balance sheet. And I'm going to draw your attention to the right-hand side because that effectively articulates what were the areas that we spent our capital on. So what buildings, infrastructure, IT we actually spent through on. So just highlighting some of the key elements, we spent £3 million upgrading Queen Mary's Hospital and making and ensuring that that is a fit-for-purpose site for everybody that operates out of that site. We spent £5.6 million on IT infrastructure and digital, some of which you will see examples for up the stairs, and that will continue to be a continued area of investment. We spent £4.2 million on environmental sustainability, and that harks back to that key commitment that we had effectively said that we were going to try and do. And that was really around looking at some of our sites and seeing how we could better utilise the really rich set of resources and sites that we've got and operate out of in Oxleas, and making sure they really work both for our members of staff, our patients, but also actually the communities in which we are operating and embedded in. And then lastly, estates and other projects, there was a further 3.8 million that we spent. That's probably the key element that I was going to draw out of that particular slide. We do have a set of charitable funds. They're separate from the normal trust accounts, but just to run you through the key themes of that, I'm going to start in the top left-hand corner, which is what the position was of our charitable funds at the start of the year, and then effectively finish in the bottom left-hand corner, which gives the expenditure. So we started with 451,000 at the beginning of the financial year, and we ended with 391. During that period, we had donations and income of 59,000, and we spent 119,000. And of that 119,000, we spent roughly about 58,000 on staff welfare schemes and a further 38,000 on patient welfare schemes. And then I'm just going to finish off with the forward look. So these are the current financial risks and areas that we're focusing on in 24-25. Some of which, for those of you that were at last year's AMM, are going to look very familiar because there are ongoing issues that we're managing year on year. The first one is making sure that we can deliver our savings targets. And our savings target is effectively the difference between the money that we get in and what we think that we're going to need to spend on services. And where the two don't match, we have a savings programme. So for 24-25, that figure was £23.9 million. And delivering that and making sure that we can deliver that and have that cost come out between 1 year and the next, or to try and get additional income to be able to cover that off, is one of the key risks and features that we have of this year. To date, we've managed to identify it using one-off things, so we are still really trying hard now to fill that gap on a recurrent basis. The second one I'd already alluded to, but it's really focusing on recruiting and retaining our staff, and you will have seen part of our strategy about being the best place to work in the NHS is very much aligned to that. And effectively, it's trying to reduce then the agency expenditure. And we set ourselves a 10% reduction in agency expenditure for this year, which I'm pleased to say we are currently on track on delivering. The third area is then reducing our reliance on independent sector beds. These are mental health beds. So this is where we have patients that require an inpatient stay, and we have had to we've had to go out to the independent sector because we cannot accommodate them within our own bed base. So we've got a large programme of work that is looking on how we can try and improve those services to ensure that all of our Bexley, Bromley and Greenwich residents are able to actually be admitted onto one of our own Oxleas wards as opposed to going out to the independent sector. And we've done a lot of work in 24-25 making sure that where we are placing people in those sectors, they are as close as they can possibly be to our core boroughs. And we've done quite well on that, I would say, in 24-25. I'm going to take risks 4 and 5 together. So those risks both allude to, we are not an isolated organisation. We are part of an integrated care system in South East London, and our finances are very much intertwined with the finances of the other organisations in South East London. We are collectively held to account for the delivery of control totals, etc., that we're issued in. So there is a risk on both our revenue, which is our day-to-day operations, and our capital, which is the investments that we make that are multi-year, in the fact that we cannot necessarily spend in the way that we would like to, given some of the restrictions that we have across South East London. So there's a risk management that we're managing on both of those fronts. And then lastly, and it's the one that's the balancing act of bringing everything together, is the risk about commissioned capacity i.e. what are the people that are paying for our services giving us to be able to run those services, against demand, which is rising across a lot of areas, children's in particular, but we also have issues in mental health, district nursing, a whole range, touches, I would say, in virtually every single service. And then what the impact is on waiting times, where those two are not aligned. And we have had examples during both 23, 24 and in 24, 25, where we have used our own resources over and above what we've been given by the commissioners to try and address some of those waiting times. But that clearly does come at a financial cost that we then need to try and balance off. So that was my attempt at running you through the key financial elements for both last year and the coming year. And I'm going to hand back to Andrew at this point.
Thank you, Asra. And there'll be an opportunity in the questions, if you have any questions about the finances, to come back to this at the end. My duty now in this part of the meeting is to talk about some of the changes that have happened in the Board of Directors and also the governor's elections and changes in the governing body. So first of all, in terms over the year in hand, in terms of the Board of Directors developments, we've welcomed one new NED, Muniza Amir, who joined back in May. I also took over from Andy Trotter as chair of the of Oxleas on the 1st of May of this year. While it doesn't actually fall within the reporting cycle of this year, I don't think we can let today's meeting go without saying goodbye to Steve Dilworth, who has been fantastic deputy chair and also chair of the Audit and Risk, and I really think we need to acknowledge his input. I think when he finally goes, we'll find Oxleas written through him like a stick of rock, I think. I certainly think he's doing that one. And Damien, who was earlier here today but had to go to another meeting, has been appointed, Damien Regent, to take over as chair of the Audit and Risk Committee from the 1st of November. And slightly in advance, because it's not until the end of April, but we will be saying goodbye to Joe Stimson this year coming, and that will also be a loss to us, and we're currently in the process of recruiting a new NED to fill her shoes. I won't read this out except to say that we have had elections for the governors this year, and the results of the elections are here. We've got some really good new governors coming. It's really good to have that commitment of the governors. The role that the governors play in the trust is an absolutely vital role. It's a vital role because what it does is it holds the board to account, and it holds the board to account for the way in which we oversee the executive and the running of the trust by them. But also the governors provide in many ways the ears and eyes of the board into aspects of the way in which the board functions, which the trust functions, and the way in which we serve the people. It's an absolutely critical role for the trust, and I'm really pleased that we've had so many people who commit their time, their energy, their talent, and their experience to this. You'll see there are some areas where we haven't received any nominations for governors. In those areas, there will be processes underway to try and recruit new governors. And I would ask you to spread the word. I think that when I talk to governors, they really feel some benefit, and many of you, of course, are governors in this room, but you feel the benefit of being part of the governors, of being involved in Oxleas, and I would just encourage you to spread the word and encourage more people to do it. So we have the list of governors who were elected, and also 2 governors who are newly appointed by appointing authorities to the governing board. We also have a number of governors who are stepping down or stepping down at this meeting, and they're stepping down during the year, and we would just like to quickly acknowledge them and acknowledge them with the gift of a small present. I don't think you will have to declare this on any declaration form, but it is a small token to appreciate the time that you spent with us. So, Joseph Hopkins. Not here. Zara King. Ravimbo Mutiazar Busy. No, thank you. Raja Rajendran. We're not doing very well here. Francis Murray. Thank you very much. There you go. Thank you. Standing in for many, Rebecca Marks Hubbard. And Olunkuli Akinolo. No. We will make sure that they get their tokens at the end. Could I have the next slide, please? This is the trouble. One of the things you need in this role is to be an octopus, and I've yet to do it. So one of the things as well that's happened this year is that our lead governor, Sue, is stepping down as lead governor. She's been a great help for me coming in as new chair. I've certainly valued my conversations with her and her wise insight, both in those conversations, but also in the various panels and other committees that we sat on, and for her scrutiny of the board. The role of lead governor, I think, this is for her to say, but I think it's a role that is a really interesting role to have, a really important role in the trust, and she's fulfilled it with aplomb, and I'd like to thank her for that. And we have a small token, Sue. Well, I think you can do it right. And we are going to welcome Tina, who's here. Tina, would just stand up so people recognise you. Tina Strack, who is going to be our new lead governor. So thank you for agreeing to take that on. And so now I'm going to hand over to Sue for her summary of the year.
Welcome, everyone. I sure hope you can hear me okay. Anyway, I'll be sad to be stepping down as lead governor, but I'm sure Tina will be amply enjoying her time. But moving on to the membership strategy, I'm not going to read it all out because hopefully you can read it, but I think it's important to say that the Council of Governors ensure that they represent the interests of people and the members of the public. Obviously, our duty is to support the trust and aim increasing service links, user, patient and carer. That's so important as governors. And working across the whole of the southeast of England and the integrated care system. The three things that I think Andrew has already mentioned and others have is about recruiting and promote members to the Oxleas Trust. And if you're not a member already, you can sign up upstairs, and it's really important. And you do find out a lot about Oxleas that you might not have known before if you become a member. Communication, having worked in the NHS myself for years, communication underpins everything we do. And that is also for the governors and all people involved in Oxleas. Engaging people and being involved is so important. Governors can't do the work that we do in the Royal We without communicating and engaging and involving other people and trying to encourage people to join with us. And as our new strategy for membership will align with everything we're asking in our new stakeholder engagement strategies. We've done some membership recruitment. This was in the foyer at Queen Mary's back in the summer, I think, or earlier than that. Jo, who's sadly not with us at the moment because she's off sick, but she's a terror at going around with the pictures, and so is Claire, her new sidekick. So they get us unaware, and hence we got, and also this lady standing over there who I'm ignoring, because she's terror, even worse. There's obviously lots of communications that come out that's really important you keep on top of it, and they are a lot by email these days, which makes it so much easier, or on the Oxleas website, which is good. Andrew mentioned about the elections. It is important we get governors to take over the roles of the places that are vacant. Surveys and questions, how do you get involved? Well, if you don't answer the surveys, you don't get your opinions and thoughts across, so it's really important to do all of those three things. And they are important to read, and they are easy to read. We do trust events like today, obviously, and other events. We taking part in community and partnership events. I went to a sort of sports day, I think it was this year, earlier, wasn't it, in the summer, which was quite good fun, and it was sunny and dry, so that's good, considering the summer we've had, and some very interesting conversations on that. So do get to those if you can. And link in with voluntary groups, because not just Oxleas that work, we have lots of voluntary groups across Oxleas community sites and boundaries. So it's good that we have involvement with those, because they can tell us what they're feeling and what their members are telling them. And taking part in discussions with health and social care partners and community organisations. They're what feed Oxleas with information that we need, again, all we, to move forward and upwards and onwards. And I think that's what we really need to do, about including the wider community. And obviously looking to the future. We've always got to look to the future. And with that, I hand over to Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you for your service as well. So very briefly, just looking to the future, we are now, since the last Members' Day, of course, we have a new government, and the new government has laid out some very clear priorities for the NHS. They are what they're calling the big three shifts in healthcare. It's hospital to community, sickness to prevention, analog to digital. And I think you will see that these are all things that are actually very right for Oxleas. Our hospital to community, our sickness to prevention are things that we absolutely take at the heart of what we do. But also, as hopefully you have seen this morning, and if you haven't seen this morning, you'll have the opportunity to see this afternoon, the analog to digital, and James will be talking about that at the moment. But I also think it's worth flagging that the government and the DHSC has initiated on Monday a consultation on what the 10-year plan will be for the NHS. And we at Oxleas clearly are going to be making our response, and we're going to be drawing on the people who use our services, on our staff, on the board, on our governors, and on our members as to informing us as to what this report should be, what our response should be to this 10-year plan. Because this 10-year plan is going to be absolutely vital for how we lay the NHS going forward. So we want to be able to use our experience and our knowledge to help shape it. So I would encourage you all as either individuals to respond to the consultation, which is on various web pages, or when we get around, when we have our plan for consulting on it, to contribute to that. But I'm now going to ask, what I'm really looking forward to is James to tell us something more about the digital future that we have. Thank you.
Okay, hopefully people can hear me okay. Actually, I might take it off here, if that's okay. Great. Okay, so yeah, I'm James Willard. I'm a consultant child and adolescent psychiatrist in the Trust. I'm also the Chief Clinical Information Officer. Now, that's an American term. Essentially, my kid's explanation for this is I'm the doctor for the computers in the organization. So I work with our wonderful digital services colleagues to help make the computers better. And we'll talk a bit about that as we go along. So I wanted to start by just a dedication, really, to our colleague Laurel Morgan Bruce, who unfortunately passed away from cancer recently, and she brought a lot of light and colour to our journey, our digital journey in the organisation. And so let's think about the colour and the light that she brought as we go through our journey today. And Unfortunately, I haven't got too much time today, so imagine this is a Netflix series, and we're going to fast forward to the one where there's a pandemic. In that episode, at that time we actually started already investing in the kind of technology that enabled our staff to work in the community. So these are iPads that allowed them, our community staff, to access Rio in the community, which meant they could, have safer, effective care when they're in people's homes. And then the pandemic came along, and we have to kind of flex the way that we were working. So we invested a lot in laptops, and particularly in the way that we're using our office space as well. So we moved away from desktops here in that top picture to laptops so people could work more flexibly. And our staff seem to have largely welcomed that. Another example of kind of work that we've done around this smarter working is e-obs. So in the past, we would write down observations of patients in our inpatient units on bits of paper. Now that's all done smartly through an app on an iPad. And so that's made it safer, and we'll be able to look at the quality of those observations. Now, and we've also done video consultations through the pandemic as a way of continuing to try and provide care. We are doing some video consultations still, and so that is a way going forward. And we've also increased our use of Microsoft Teams, and we were talking about that earlier today and how much it's changed the way that we do business as an organization. Unfortunately, we have to do some of the boring stuff. So many of you may have had problems with your Wi-Fi at home and how frustrating that is. And so we need our Wi-Fi to be reliable and consistent for our staff. So we've upgraded our Wi-Fi and our networks. It sounds boring. And Lee, wherever he is, Christy, who's our head of ICT, can tell you about switches until the cows come home. And then we've also upgraded our devices. Many of you might have your own personal smartphones. Those devices become insecure over time as Apple or Google stop updating them. And we need to keep your data safe, so we need to invest in those new devices for our staff. And that's what we do roughly every 5 years. And then we've been improving processes, and our colleague Laurel Morgan-Bruce was involved in some of these. So Document is the system that allows us to share letters with your GP electronically, so that's improved the system. I'm sure we'll all recognize the problems we have with our postal service, so hopefully our GPs are getting consistent. E-referral used to be called Choose and Book. We talked about that a bit earlier in the session, so we've started to use that in some of our services, not all of our services. And then hybrid mail, again, this is a way of trying to reduce the cost of us sending out bits of paper. And so all of these things are kind of foundational elements, if you like, to our digital journey. And now we're in this as we move through our journey, through the episodes of this digital journey, we're going from IT, that kind of traditional idea of IT, to digital services. And that's why you'll see my colleagues in their green. We call ourselves digital services now. And we've invested in our clinical leadership. So my colleagues who are on another table are our associate chief clinical information officers. They're digital clinicians like me. And all the research shows that if you invest in digital clinical leadership, you're much more likely to get those gains from technology. So that's what we've done. We've also brought together the group of professionals working on how to optimize our existing systems, whether that's our main computer system, Rio, and we're calling that the Clinical Design Authority. Again, bringing that clinical leadership. What's the clinical priority in how we improve our systems? And then we've also developed Oxcare, which is our patient engagement platform. And that's trying to bring that 21st century way of interacting. We talked about interacting before, way of communicating with Oxleas. Can we share those letters digitally with you? You probably, many of you may be using a banking app now. You don't get your you don't get paper statements. You get them through your app. So how can we bring those modern sensibilities to Oxleas' offer through our platforms like Oxcare? And then in terms of safer care, we've had electronic prescribing on our wards, and that's really improved the safety of prescribing on our inpatient units. We haven't got to community services yet. That's something we're thinking about. And that's been largely welcomed by staff. One of the kind of most positive impacts we've had in terms of staff wanting to use that technology. And then we've also started to try and make better use of the data. And there's an example here from our platform, iFox, really to try and highlight where we need to improve, where we need to learn, but also recognizing where we're having success. And that's an important part, celebrating success. And so as we move forward, part of what we're doing is building our innovation partnerships, if you like, with those around us. So we're working with Royal Borough of Greenwich around this assistive technology enhanced care. That's about how do we use technology in people's homes to look after them better in where they live. Maybe that's a care home as well as their domestic dwellings. And that technology hopefully keeps them better in their own home. And we're doing that in partnership with Royal Greenwich. So hopefully that's a good program to look at in the future. And then upstairs, you'll see the stand by Thalamus. We're hoping to digitize the mental health act. What do I mean? So at the moment, staff use bits of paper or electronic bits of paper as a part of the mental health act processes. Thalamus will help us do that across London in a much more sophisticated 21st century way. And then upstairs as well, you've got Luminova, a game-based approach to giving children with anxiety problems interventions. They don't have to wait to see somebody. They can use this intervention. It's a great example of waiting well. How can we use this technology? Virtual reality in our forensic services. So our colleagues have been using virtual reality to help skill up and develop people's skills that help them cope when they're back in the community. I would recommend you go and have a look at that technology upstairs. Improving information for direct care, clinical care and sharing with our partners. We want to be able to share that information readily about you with our clinical partners in terms of primary care, in terms of secondary care, so you don't have to repeat your story as a patient. And that's feedback we hear all the time. Why do I have to keep saying the same thing to clinicians all the time? And then learning with our system partners through better data. How can we pull our data together, pool our data together even, so that we can learn together? Our digital future together. So just thinking about what's next, what's over the horizon. It's about artificial intelligence and using other assistive technologies. Now, we talked a little bit about this earlier today, and you can see Simon from Access Group who's demonstrating ambient voice technology. Our staff spend a lot of time typing information into the electronic systems. How can we give that time back to them to care, to see patients, to think about how we improve our services? We can do that through technologies like ambient voice technology, robotic process automation. How do we automate these processes that we do consistently? And then in our business services, if you like, in our corporate services, Copilot, which is again an AI-based thing that helps us, for example, in our meetings, automatically take notes so that we don't have to spend time typing those up. There's lots of examples upstairs of apps and wearables that I've already handsome, and I think it's about, my analogy is always this. We can use technology like a bauble on a wilting Christmas tree, or we can try and redesign the whole Christmas tree with the best use of technology. And that's what I wanted us to do in Oxleas, is redesign the whole Christmas tree, not just hang our digital baubles on a wilting Christmas tree. So we have to make Oxleas a great digital place to work for all our staff. And we recognized this earlier today, thinking about the skills that our staff need. How can they talk to you about AI if they don't understand it themselves? So we need to help our staff learn about this new technology. And we need to continue to build that digital clinical leadership. How do we make sure that clinicians are leading that journey and recognizing it? And my final slide, and then hopefully we'll have a few minutes for questions. And this is the most important slide. So people often confuse, when I say digital, they think I mean technology. I don't. Digital is about cultures and practices. It's about how we are. We can be a digital organization if we think about these principles. And that's user-centered design and co-production. Now, there is a difference between those two. I could give a whole lecture on the difference between user-centered design and co-production. But let's focus on the main bits, right? We need to listen to people. We need to listen to what they're telling us about what they want. But importantly, we also need to observe, because people tend to tell you what they want, but they show you what you need. They need, sorry. So they show you what they need, and we need to spend time, observing our staff, working with our patient representatives, and thinking about what we need. And then we need to create that future together. So we do it together. Digital inclusion, we leave no one behind. Just because we can use that technology to communicate with you, send you digital letters, that doesn't mean everyone wants that. So we make sure that we build in those options for people so they don't get left behind as we go along, and they can benefit. We build in agility, so we need to make future change easier. And I think that's something we're really grappling with at the moment. We've got a lot of sort of we've got a lot of legacy issues in terms of the technology that we've got, and we need to invest in making that change easier in the future. We need to maintain trust. You might be concerned about what we're doing with your data in terms of artificial intelligence, and we need to make sure we maintain that trust. Explain to you how this use of data, this use of technology is making care safer, and how we're keeping your data secure. And finally, and most importantly, and this fits with this kind of equity idea that I absolutely endorse in terms of our focus as Oxleas, is how do we make sure that we're using technology in an ethical way, and that's just for everyone. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. So these are our lighthouses. This will guide us in the dark, if you like. So where uncertainty is almost certain in the future, our lighthouses will guide us through into that digital journey in the future. So on that note, thank you very much.
Thank you, James. And I think, that analogy of actually this is a lighthouse that's taking us into a future that we don't know exactly what it's going to be like, but there's some immense opportunities, and we've got to work out how to use those opportunities in the best possible way. And I think some of the ideas you will see for those of you who haven't had a chance to go around the exhibition, you will see upstairs when you do go around the exhibition. So, I want to end this part of the meeting, and then we will have questions. So I just want to end this part of the meeting with two things. First of all, a thank you, to everybody who's online and to everybody who's in the room for being here. And hopefully we'll have some good questions now coming up in the next bit. But thank you for coming. Thank you for being part of the Oxleas journey. Thank you for being part of our future. It's really important to us that everybody is here and has their voice here today. Also, I think we need to do some thank yous to people who've actually helped put on today. James already mentioned the people in the green T-shirts who have doing fantastic things upstairs, but especially today has been Claire. Thank you for all of your work. Do you want to come up? You don't? A small token of... These days do not run themselves. It takes an awful lot, and the fact that everything has run so smoothly so far just shows that some people have been pedaling very fast under the water to make sure that's happened. And now I'd also like to say goodbye to the people online, because we won't be broadcasting the question and answer session so that people can ask questions here freely. So thank you very much for your attending, and we'll say goodbye to you now.